On today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning, we're going to share with you the number one financial skill that people need in order to prepare for retirement. And it's not about your investments, it's not about claiming Social Security, it's not about required minimum distributions. But by the end of this episode, you're going to know what you need to practice in order to be fully prepared for retirement. Hi, I'm John Shearer, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan-Ramel, and I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. Before we start, let's ask everybody to please subscribe. It helps us with YouTube. Okay, John, let's start.
All right.
Big reveal. What's the number one skill?
We're not going to make people wait till the end to hear that. So the number one thing that we have for people that is something that they don't really know and can be really challenging is knowing how much they spend and how to project that into retirement. Right? It sounds simple when you say that, right? But thinking about that is really a challenging thing. It's the number one thing that we can't help people with, in that we can tell you how much to save. We can tell you how much you are able to take out of your portfolio. We can help you make that decision about Social Security claiming, about RMD planning, meaning required minimum distributions. The only thing that your financial advisor can't help you determine is will tell you is what you spend.
Right.
We can help you determine that. We're going to talk about that here today, but that's the biggest factor too. I'll get people that ask Bridget, hey, do I need $1 million? If I have $1 million, can I retire?
Right.
Well, it depends. If you spend $30,000 a year, probably. If you spend $300,000 a year, probably not.
Yeah.
Right? It's that really big factor. And so often in our world, the focus, or the media anyway, the talking heads like you and I, talk about, investment return, what to do about inflation and interest rates and all those things. But the driving factor is, hey, how much do I spend? And being realistic. It sounds so simple, but it's not easy. Right.
And it's something that in large measures within your control too.
It's one thing you can change, right?
Yeah, exactly. However, it's hard for a lot of people mentally there's just a big hurdle to figuring out what that number really is. And I go all Jack Nicholson and say, when I'm thinking about this, and I'm serious, for me, it's I can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
I don't even want to know how much I spend.
Yeah.
And while I'm earning money, I can earn my way out of it.
It's different when you're spending.
Yeah, right? But when you're retired, you can't earn your way out of it.
We'll have people that say, I really need to have a budget. I really need to develop a budget. And my answer is well, if you want to, that's great. But are you spending more than you're making? Are you doing your savings goals?
Right.
And the same thing plays into retirement. Having that budget sort of gets baked into our mind. And I appreciate what you say. Are you sure I want to know what happened with these things?
I don't know.
And then even if I don't know, I want to know how do you figure that out, right? And the traditional way is here's a list of things and fill in all your expenses.
Right.
And not that doesn't work in some fashion, but golly, that's really hard to go and break down those things. So the one thing that I do...
And disgusting. It's I don't want to know this. Gosh, I spend that much on this,
So sort of the 5-star tip I have for folks is to say, listen, these days, so much of our lives is on the credit card, right? So if you have 1, 2 credit cards, 3 credit cards, print off those statements, and I'll put together just a really quick spreadsheet, or write it down on a piece of paper. January, how much was the billing in that month? How much was charged that month? And then February, and all the way down. Now you get 12 months of spending, and I don't necessarily care. At the end of the year, a lot of credit cards will say, this is what you spent on travel, and this is what you spent on. If that trips your trigger, if it's important to you, great. All I really care about, the first level, that sort of 30,000 foot, is how much went out the door each month. And then you take, most of us have a checking account that pays the majority of our bills, maybe 2 of them, right? And we've got some things on auto pay, and we got a few checks, less and less it feels like these days, right? But there's, not like in the old days maybe where there was 2 or 3 pages of transactions, a handful of transactions. And what we do with it is you say, listen, the payment to the credit card, well, we've already counted the credit card in there, right? So what is not on the credit card? Golly, maybe my mortgage, and I wrote a check for my property and casualty insurance, insurance and I wrote a check for my real estate taxes, or, and again, not necessarily dividing those things out and figure out what it was, but just what went out the door. So this went out the door from my credit card, this went out the door from my wife's credit card, this went out the door from our joint checking account, and maybe 3, 4, 5 lines, and that tells you add those numbers all up, and that tells us that's what went out the door last year. That's what we spent.
Right.
Right.
So, and I would say that some people spend more on they use a debit card and they don't use a credit card. So, okay, fine. Use your, lean on your bank and your bank information. The other thing is that I would say, actually for me, you're making it sound really easy, because I know that online with my credit card, I can get the whole year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can do a whole year statement. They'll tell me what I did, my annual spending report. Again, something I don't want to look at. Even though I'm a financial planner, you'd think for me, the way I approach this usually, just so you know, is like, if I'm saving enough, then I've earned the right to
spend, right?
to not worry about it.
I love that.
But again, when I'm retiring, I need to shift gears a little bit, and just to do the projections, like actually know what the spending amount is.
Well, and I love I appreciate you sharing, first of all, that like, hey, I don't like looking at this stuff. The whole Jack Nicholson thing, like, right? And from a professional standpoint, like, I don't have any judgment, and I encourage you, if you choose to do this at home, great exercise, but it is what it is, right? It's not a value necessarily. Right? Now you can take a look at that. I say, listen, you look at that and go, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like, yeah, okay, that's cool? Or, holy moly, I didn't realize what went on. Sometimes we get it in both directions. We've got folks that say, yeah, we really don't spend very much. And you look at it and they go, ooh, look at that, right? I didn't realize.
Most people, a lot of people, it has no relation to what I think, what they think. So people are like, oh, I don't spend much. And then they start saying
what they spend.
the 3 clubs that they belong to, and the blah blah blah.
And it's awareness. Right. It's not right. It's being aware. Like, here are the facts. Right. Okay, then we can do something with that. And when you don't know that retirement, as we're talking about planning for retirement, it is really hard to figure out in general. And if you don't know what the spending number is, how can we do those things, right? So getting that, and it sounds kind of weird, I think, to say, well, this is a skill. But it's really hard. I mean, we've both decades of experience, and you go, no, this is challenging, and it's the one thing that nobody can tell you necessarily, right? That you've got to be able to come up with is, what do you spend on those things? So track what you did spend. One point I want to make too is that it can be easy to, I call it don't fool yourself. Right, because you look back and you see, here's those numbers, and sometimes you go, hold on, what happened that month? That was crazy. And you go, oh, that was a one-time thing. Right? Oh, that was one. That was one. Well, if you have all these one-time things, and I actually do this for myself, I've tracked it over the years, and you go, yep, there's all those one-time things. Guess what? They're not one-time things, right? The cost of home ownership, those sort of things.
Well, what about things like gifting to your loved ones?
Yeah.
And this is kind of going back to The Millionaire Next Door, actually.
Yeah.
Is they talk about giving money to family. And so, how do you handle that? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm glad you brought this up.
Because some people, that's not yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. This is super. I appreciate. I had forgotten all about this. Is the answer is it depends. Mm-hmm. There you go. Right. Thanks for that answer. Right. Thanks. But it does. So so in the situation for some folks, hey, listen, I'm going to give money to my kids, my grandkids, set up a Roth IRA for my grandkids, that sort of thing. That could be completely discretionary, meaning, yeah, it's nice to do, but I don't really care.
Okay.
Right? So we can.
All right, my one-time rehab expense to get my kid in rehab.
I'm
serious. That's not a.
Well, and the answer is it depends. There are some things, I think, that are truly one-time expenses. Mm-hmm. We've got some friends of ours that took the trip of a lifetime for their 30th wedding anniversary. They're not. It's not like, oh yeah, this is a recurring thing. Like, no, there are some legitimate one-time things. Listen, you've got to pay for a rehab stint. That's not going to be probably an ongoing thing. Hopefully, anyway. Hopefully it works, right? And so one of the examples that I use in that circumstance is think about your health care. Right? If you fell off your bike and it was a freak thing and you don't really even ride your bike that often and you had a $50,000 expense, is that a one-time thing? Yeah, that could be reasonable. If you've got some health concerns, you've got a bad heart, and periodically you've got these things that come up, yeah, guess what? That's probably not a one-time thing, even though you don't have it every year. Right? So it's this sort of art mixed with science on things.
Well, and it gets back to, is it really one time, or is it you can't handle the truth?
Yeah, right. And don't lie to yourself,
Yeah.
right? Like this might be what it is. So it's challenging, right? There are some challenges in there to think about with that. And so it's that sort of thinking. I love that example. Here's the other thing though too is things like travel, things like gifting to family.
Right.
Is it discretionary? I can choose to do this and it's a one-time thing, or you know what? If I can't do that, that's okay.
Right.
And you think, I don't know, travel sounds like a luxury, but you know what? Maybe taking your weekly vacation or taking your annual vacation for a week, maybe that's not optional for you. Maybe that's part of my core, happiness level. Right? Maybe taking the trip to Europe or something is, I do that, but if I don't do that, I could live without that, right? It just depends on your situation. For some of our clients I know, gifting money to family is not optional. That is one of their core values.
Right.
Cool, that has to fit in. For somebody else, you go, you know what? Periodically, I'm going to give money to my kids and grandkids. It doesn't have to be a fixed cost for those folks. So that's where some of this art does come in, I think, to it.
Great. It seems like that's a great time to wrap it up, John.
Yeah.
I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shearer. I've got a family financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. Both Bridget and I are taking on clients at our practices. But if you're looking for an advisor in your area, we're both members of the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. So if you're looking for an advisor that thinks like us, check out acplanners.org.
And please subscribe.